All the evidence was laid out flat on the table for the jury to see today, and honestly, I don't even know why the trial is continuing to go. We're going to be recapping day 2 of the actual trial in today's video. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. Sofa's still not here because, well, I'm not there. We are on the road, still traveling. I do have little Mr. Luke with me here. He is nibbling on one of his toys. He is sat next to me while we live streamed day 2 of the Sarah Boone trial today. Now what I want to do is just go over a quick little update video of some of the highlights of today's going-ons for people on this channel who don't like watching the live stream stuff. And want the vibe of just like the information real quick. I get it, I'm here for you, okay? Now, big, huge thing before we even start. Sarah is taking the stand tomorrow if everything goes as smoothly. The state will rest its case. They will call Sarah and put her on the stand. I am not going to be streaming. Well, I shouldn't say that. I might be streaming tomorrow, but most likely not. So what we'll be doing is doing a live chat in the evening sometime to talk about it because I will be watching and listening to it while I'm on the road. So don't worry, we will be discussing because my goodness gracious, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just read from my little phone here. I just made very quick notes and whatnot. I want to talk about some of the highlights, at least to me, what I felt like were the highlights in today's testimony and court proceedings. So now we started the day off. Well, first of all, one of the jurors was late, like they were stuck in the line to get in. Apparently they went in the wrong line. And the judge was like, well, look, they have a jurors only line. And the jurors were like, well, look, that line was really long too. So we got off to a little bit of a late start. Okay, so then we had a forensic pathologist on the stand. She had a very calming voice, very like, very ASMR, very like I want to go to sleep kind of a vibe. Now, she would testify to the positional asphyxiation. She said it was a homicide. There was environmental suffocation. Specifically, she was talking about, you know, as we know if you follow this, his position in the suitcase, the whole scenario, and that yes, it was homicide. Now, there's a whole bunch of back and forth about like, look, I can't really tell you how long it took him to die or exactly how long he was in there. We're looking at some time probably around like this 11-hour mark, and that was a big time zone, if you will, for him being in there. She also talked, and this is the biggest thing for her testimony for me, about the blunt impact wounds. He had several, okay? That when they put the stuff on the screen to show like that diagram they do, and they showed some of his body parts, like maybe like a little bit of his arm to show bruising and stuff, there was way more injuries to him than I was aware of. So that was a very sobering moment to watch, okay? Now, also large bruise on his hands, bruises on left back, bruises on forearm, head, eye. When asked, like, is this consistent with the bat? Yes. Is this consistent with shoving downstairs? Yes. So, you know, it's a possibility. It wasn't like, yeah, that's 100% what happened, but it's consistent. So do with that what you will. It's my theory and idea, or I shouldn't say that, my opinion, I guess you could say, that either, definitely, I think she beat him with a bat, right? It could have been while he was upstairs and then shoved him down, or shoved him down and then beat him with a bat, or both. So I think once he was in that suitcase, she gave him a very good beating, okay? Now, after that, they talked about the blood alcohol, the BAC. His was 0.139. Yes, that's way over the legal limit as far as, you know, driving is concerned, but also it's like the blip in time. So like we can't say what it was at any other time other than that. Now they said that they found obviously alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine in his system, and that was it. Okay. They go over the bruises, and I put here like there's way more injuries than we thought. Now the defense does the cross. And essentially, you know, they go over the toxicology report, and they're basically like, to sum it up in my opinion, they were like, okay, this happened because he was drunk, because he was impaired, he couldn't get out of the suitcase, he was small, the suitcase was big, he had room to move. Basically a victim blaming type session. Even in the realm of trying to create reasonable doubt, a lot of it seemed very much grabbing at straws, okay? Now let's see, she says that when his last drink, she can't really say when his last drink was, I put on here. Again, tries to insinuate that George had a heart attack. So just going every little bit of angle that you can. Now remember, this is pre them showing all the video evidence and the audio evidence that we had. The cop car interviews, the interrogation that's so infamous at this point. So just know that going into it. Okay, so after that was like an hour and a half. Now the judge met with counsel and they talk about a stipulation, which is basically like identifying George as the victim. It was a stipulation of fact, which means both parties have to agree to it. They did. It was victim identification, a stipulation that the deceased is George. Now, next we had Meredith, FDLE, and she was is a senior crime lab analyst. Basically, a big thing from her was there was no DNA from each other on their fingernails. And if you remember, Sarah initially said that the scratches on George's back were from her nails. Well, if you also remember when they took Sarah's fingernail clippings, it had been like the next day or in that interview that we saw. So she had time to clean her hands and whatnot or whatever. But it was interesting because you would have thought if there was like this struggle and this fight and all this stuff, and it was so tumultuous, I was afraid for my life that you might find something of that nature under their fingernails, but there was nothing there, especially George, right? So then after that we get a digital person on the stand. Okay, now this is where it starts to get really heated up, okay? So they start going through all the information on her phone, on Sarah's phone, and you're seeing timestamps, text messages, who they're from, and this and that. Okay, so you're seeing these text messages about Sarah, or between Sarah and Mo, George's brother. Now, Mo is allegedly the one who got in a real big fight with him at one point and caused some damage to him, allegedly because he had beat up on Sarah over something that Sarah had said to Mo. I mean, you kind of see the whole circle, right? Okay, so we see these texts, right? We see the text of her saying, hide and seek I shall, and I'll get rid of George, and, talking about my life will be better, this, that, and the other. Now, one thing that is interesting is on the text messages, like the outgoing thing on some of them is Brian Boone's name, okay? This is Sarah's ex-husband. Now we're gonna hear more tea later on the stand about how much he was like paying for all their stuff, okay? So he was probably paying for it or paid for it one time, the phone, it was in his name. So, when the defense got up there, they were really trying to kind of make it out like, well, could you say who sent these out? Because there's Brian's name on there type situation. That didn't really stick. Okay, so that was all I really wrote for that. So then they go to lunch, we come back. Now the judge will throw a heckler out. I don't know what was going on with that, but there was drama. Okay, so then after that, the judge is like, look, we're getting ready to go into these, the videos and the audios. Basically, we need to stay late, okay? And so the judge is like, well, look, there's somebody on the jury that has to do something with their children at 5, so we'll ask them when they come back from lunch. So everybody goes to lunch, they come back, they ask them. We were like, that the lady who was like, or I think it was a lady, who was like, well, let me go make a phone call and I'll see. She was like, you better get over here and get the kids. Like, this is getting ready to get good, okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, you better come get these kids. So she comes back, yeah, we can stay late. They're like, okay, cool, let's keep going. Now, this is where it gets juicy, okay? So, let me just go to my notes over here. Okay, so this is when we get Detective Chelsea Kepsel on the stand. This is the detective, the very pretty lady that we saw. Number one, we've seen her a couple of times on the stand now, but she was the female detective in the interrogation that we saw that was coughing a lot and whatnot, okay? So first of all, they play the car interview. Remember, there's like a couple of car interviews and then the interrogation that we've all kind of come to know. Okay, I'm just gonna read my notes here and go through them. So let's play hide and seek like before. Okay, no. Let's play hide and seek like before. And I wrote, was that planned? One thing looking at her text messages and then hearing the way she was talking and about the hide and seek thing is I was like, again, I don't think she was like, well, I'll wake up on this day and play a game of this. But it was almost like she had thought this through. Like this idea at some point had gone through some version of Sarah, whether it was sober Sarah, drunk Sarah, or something, but it was just, I'm getting that energy from this. I think there was way more, I hate to use this word, intention behind this than previous, okay? Now, she mentions that George had teeth issues. He'd been complaining about them, talking about his chest hurting, and this is in the car. So this is like one of the first initial conversations she has. She's already throwing out all these different excuses and reasons, right? Okay, then she says that Brian checks to see if she's getting her son because she might have job interviews. and she can't take him. So basically she's trying to make it out like, well, Brian will call me, he's blowing up my phone, and he does this. Well, he does that because, he's just making sure I'm going to pick our son up because, I might have a job interview. She paints herself in the best light, okay, when the reality is she's probably passed out drunk and isn't going to go get her son, so she just pawns him off on Brian, right? But granted, she's going to want to collect that money from Brian for it too. Also in the car, she says, they had a wonderful time, her and George, no arguments, nothing, okay? Then they start talking about the suitcase. That whole situation goes down. She's talking about he had 2 fingers out. She figured he'd, get out. She goes to sleep, figured he'd come upstairs and have intimate relations. So basically in this, right off the rip, she's talking about, I thought he could get out. He had his fingers poking out. I was going to go upstairs and he was going to come up and we were going to get busy like we always do, so, and then I just fell asleep or whatever. Okay. Then we do another recording from the car, and this one is both the female and the male detective. Now, all during this time, I'm just reading my notes here. All during this time, she claims they were laughing. They ask her if he asked to get out. She says no. She says they weren't drunk when asked. They had a handful of glasses. So she was like, we had a handful of glasses of drinking or whatever. They had their wits about them. She says the last argument was last week. She admits that Brian, her ex, was paying the bills. They drink whatever they can afford. So when she talks about this, she's like, well, Brian might, pay the hot water bill for Lucas to have hot water. And she literally uses the child all throughout this. If you've been following this, you see her do it, where she uses the child as an excuse. Number one, to get out of trouble at times, but number two, probably to get Brian to pay for things like, well, Brian, do you want your son to have hot water over here? George isn't working. George doesn't make that much money. It's my guesstimate and opinion after watching this today that she probably shamed George a lot for not making enough money, for not, being whatever. I don't think it was ever an option to Sarah to go do that herself. And I think probably she looked at her contribution was probably like child support and manipulating Brian and doing this, that, and the other, right? And then she sat here and probably had George paying for it. And as she said, a bill here and there, but he was probably also their alcohol money, things of this nature, okay? So, talks about losing teeth, talks more about George's brother fighting George having to get reconstructive surgery. She says that George's weight concerns her, that he can eat and eat and eat, but he keeps, losing weight and he can't gain weight or whatever. They talk about the phone that they share, but he doesn't have the password. Now, again, to me, this is just weird, right? Okay, so he doesn't even have a phone, so you're sharing it, but he has to use your face feature to open it. Like, the level of control with that is insane. Okay, she goes on and on. I don't know what happened. And she's like, maybe he had a heart attack, an aneurysm. Again, just constantly throwing out potential excuses, right? Now, Sarah then will insinuate towards the end of this about like she's afraid for her life, talking about George's family. They don't, want him with her, so on and so forth. She'll also reiterate this later with the cops, but I do believe that, and maybe she has a rightful fear there, because also there's a guilty conscience, I think, going on. But also she knows that, they don't like her, like for all due reason, right? So she says that he threatened her all the time. And then they're like, well, where's proof of this? Do you have it on your phone? Or is it verbal? And she's like, no, it's all verbal. So here she is talking about there is no, don't look at my phone. There isn't any of that, right? It's all verbal. So, very interesting. You can't prove this, but now all of a sudden, like in, the next day, it's look at my phone, look at my phone, look at my phone. So you can piece together how she fits her narrative with the more information she gets. She gathers information and figures out how to twist it, okay? So we then are shown I didn't see this before. We get shown Publix footage video. One day it's her and George going through the checkout, and I swear it looks like she's barefoot. That was a big thing in the live chat, was like, is she barefoot? It looks like she's wearing like a nightgown and some sweatpants. It appears that he pays at the register. Then the next day he's there by himself. It's my belief, and again, this isn't proof, that this is probably, like when they talk about errands and stuff like that, this is probably her biggest errand of the day, was the alcohol run to Publix, right? And cigarettes. Cigarettes and alcohol were probably there too, at the forefront of everything in order to function. Okay, so we moved to the interrogation video. They played the whole thing, okay? And literally, y'all, imagine yourself being the jury and seeing that for the very first time after you've seen this stuff and after this evidence and whatnot, right? I mean, come on, please. So at the very end of it, the state questions Chelsea like a couple of questions. And they're like, that's it. It was like 6 o'clock by then. So they were like figuring out tomorrow. The defense, of course, is like, hey, we want to bring this person in on Zoom at last minute. And at this point, I'm sitting here like, why bother these nice people? Quit, just give it up at this point. Just give it up, right? The damage is so damaging that has been done. I don't know literally what the jury could even be thinking at this point with the things they saw just today. Well, they're going to put Sarah on the stand tomorrow. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm going to possibly stream tomorrow, but I have to travel and do stuff. So I am definitely going to probably go live tomorrow night when I get to where I'm going, so that we can all sit here and discuss this, right? Because this is going to be major, okay? Like major. It's just, it's crazy. So some of the big takeaways for me today was, number one, definitely being like, oh, this was way more violent, like the way that she did this, right? Nobody will ever know the exact way except for Sarah. And the other person obviously is not here to speak for himself. It was way more violent than anticipated. Sarah was spending a lot of time probably getting everybody around her to pay her way. I think that she definitely berated George. I think she shamed him. I think she did all the things like that. I think that she uses her son as an excuse and as a pawn to get what she wants. And I mean, obviously this goes without saying, I think she's incredibly manipulative. Now, all these little things that she's throwing out, with this, another thing that I walked away with is I was like, almost instantly, I think, she had guilty conscience. She knew what she did was not right. Okay, once that video came out and she realized that in the interrogation, that blew her out of the water, but she didn't slow her roll. But even before that, she had the guilty conscience. She's going to, the cops with, all these questions, this, that, and the other. We're not going to talk about the interrogation video here, because if you've been following me, you'll know I've been like breaking it back down. I've done another one before, like we've gone over it so many times. So we won't do it in this video. I just really wanted to talk about some of the quick little, tidbits that I saw today that were major to me, at least. And that's really the only things I wrote down there. Those were the biggest takeaways. It was just, again, another day of very damaging evidence that speaks for itself. There's not much to say about it. That's the thing that's tricky about this case. It's very just cut and dry, right? It's all on video. She did the job for them. So we'll see what she has to say on the stand. With what they have put out there and how much she contradicts herself in the video evidence, there's very little that she can get up there and say reasonably without, making her getting caught lying on the stand, okay? Because she literally negates any possible thing she could be saying now in a variety of times and in video evidence and audio evidence. So to turn around now and be like, oh, I was scared, I was lying. Oh, I was a battered spouse. Oh, I was this. It's all right there. And again, that interview sealed her deal. And also seeing her reaction. So I'm thinking from the jury. Number one, they see the video of that she took of the suitcase. But now they end the day on them seeing her reaction to seeing it for the first time. And just being like, I don't want to watch this. You're trying to make me feel bad. Everything in that interrogation goes back to her. And it has on the stand. Now, at one point, I was reading on Twitter and whatnot, somebody had put on there, I think it was a Surviving the Survivor podcast, tweeted out something about confirming that the judge told Sarah to quit turning around and looking at whatever. She loves that and again, this is my opinion on this part, I think she loves this attention. I think she absolutely loves it. I think that life is probably easy for her in jail. She doesn't have to, work, do this, do that. She has 3 hots and a cot, this, that, and the other. She has all this infamy. People probably send her money. You know what I mean? I don't think she's afraid of prison in that way, because she's facing a lot of time. And now that we've seen a lot of this evidence, some of it like is stuff that I haven't seen before, or like extended versions, it just more and more goes to why you turn 15 years down. Why why, but I think at the end of the day and at the heart of it is a line that she said where she's like, I'm not going to admit to something that I didn't do intentionally or something like that. And I think that lies in addition to like whatever personality issues she has going on. She and her heart does not believe that she did anything wrong because she didn't mean to. And she probably seemingly kind of views it like, this is almost like I'm annoyed with George for dying because look at what it's caused me. That's her vibe throughout the whole thing, and I'm sure the jury saw it. So that being said, I just wanted to do a quick update over here for people who would rather get the information this way. And again, this is just my little take on it. You check out your other creators you watch and see what they have to say. These are the things that stuck out to me, and that's it. So I appreciate you watching. Stay tuned for tomorrow. I'll let y'all know at some point tomorrow what we're going to be doing, and that's it. If you could drop some little sofas off for myself, Rosco and Spirit, Bo and Luke, who are running around here somewhere, so we got a place to hang out in the comment section, talk about Sarah and all this other crazy stuff we talk about, and until we meander down there, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. Also, if you're looking for merch, be sure to check out my Teespring store. I'll put that up here. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.